fully among you. Any questions before I take my seat so we can begin?
Apologies to those that are watching from home. We just realized that the sound was off, so sincere apologies. So I think it might be helpful if you introduce yourselves again. Yeah, just your name and your district so that folks at home can know who you are.
Again, George Ryan, District 3.
Anna Devlin Gothier, District 5.
Jason Dorney, District 2. Patrick Terrell, District 3. Dylan Maxfield, District 4.
Lynn Griesberg, District 2.
Thank you. Okay, so the first topic we're going to be exploring is the budget. In the FY26 budget, that's the year we're in now, the growth in funding needed for many things, staffing and services, was much larger than what was available. So those of you who are successful in the election, among the first things you'll begin to do is work on the FY27 budget right after the beginning of the new calendar year. So think for just a minute quietly to yourself, which area will be your number one priority and which will be your number two priority? I hope you've each identified your number one and two. Since you're writing, you're probably making notes about that. But when I ask you now, starting with George, to tell us what his number one and two are, just give us the word or the phrase. No explanation yet. Okay, George?
So school budget and infrastructure.
Who's next?
Are we going in that order?
You're not going in that
Okay.
order, so, yeah. I saw Patrick, and then I saw Anna, and then Dylan.
Also school budget and infrastructure.
Patrick? No, Anna, Patrick? I forgot which one. I saw a second.
Municipal services, all municipal services, and process.
Thank you. Dylan,
Gonna bring it back to schools and infrastructure.
thank you. Lynn?
Schools and municipal services, including infrastructure.
Okay, and that leaves Jason.
Yeah, schools and infrastructure.
Okay. So I'd like to know from at least a couple of you why you chose number one as number one. I saw 1, 2.
So this community values its schools a great deal. Education is the fundamental business of this community. So I'm a lifelong educator. I spent over 40 years in the classroom. Both my daughters went through the Amherst schools. So the schools are important to me. But we clearly face a challenge in trying to balance the needs and services the town provides with the realities the schools face. And there's no question that the schools face some serious challenges. Charter reimbursement formula is out of whack, rising health costs. There are a host of the cost of special education. So the schools face very serious challenges. And I think there are ways, and maybe we'll talk about them later this evening. I think I'm going to talk in some generalities. I think there's some very specific things we could do to try and help. But I really think that it's important that we also look at the bigger picture. This crisis is not something that just happened yesterday or last week or a year ago. It's been building for some time. I think there were actions and decisions made in good faith that have also contributed to the problem we face. So I think we have to look at it in the larger context, but we also have to find a way to work together to resolve it. We need at least a 5-year plan. We need to have some plan that lets parents and teachers and paras know that they have some kind of security. But at the same time, the town has to be able to see that it can provide the very basic functions that are necessary to make a town it should be. So I think it's that balancing act that is gonna be the challenge. I think it's gonna require openness and cooperation. And that's something that I think I bring to the table. I found my views constantly changing. I think one of the biggest issues for me is trying to just get facts, trying to get information that I can make a good decision on. And at times that's been a challenge.
Great, thank you. You're a great role model. You finished exactly on 2 minutes.
He's looking at me like.
Okay, so let me just say that, since a lot of you had some of the same things, feel free if you want to stick with number 1 or pivot to number 2 if you choose. And, Anna, you were next.
So who isn't going to say schools and infrastructure, I think is kind of a key point here. And I also want to be clear that the job of the town council isn't to come in with one existing priority over another. And I think that's really important for us as counselors to remember, is that we can have things that we value going into this budget, but we should not be going into a budget saying, I'm going to prioritize this one thing over everything else, no matter what. Our job also isn't to create line item budgets. Our job is to create budget guidelines for the town manager as he builds his municipal budget and as he considers the other budgets from other areas. So for me, the words that I tried to make an umbrella, because I was trying to get around the forced 1-2, apologies for that, were process and municipal services. Municipal services is a huge umbrella that I would include schools underneath it. Our education, or the education that we offer, is a municipal service. I am a very, very proud ARHS graduate, and my mom was a teacher in these schools in the district for her entire career. I have deep ties to our schools, and I'm so grateful for the education that I received. It's allowed me to do this, which is amazing. But for me, digging into our budgetary process is the crucial issue that the town council must be prepared to do this year. We need to consider how and when we're bringing these different elected bodies to the table to have these conversations. We need to advocate for the budget coordinating group to come together earlier in the process and fulfill their charter obligation of creating budget guidelines, which they are not currently doing. I believe that we need to leave behind the mindset of this is how we have always done it in favor of what do we need now and in the future. We can't keep looking back and using old systems. We have a new form of government. We need to create new mechanisms. And lastly, we need to ensure that our climate action and racial justice goals aren't viewed as nice extras that are the first things to go when things get tough. I'm hoping that folks will look at this process a bit more holistically.
Who's next?
You're up first, I can go for it, how you feel? Sure, thanks, Anna.
Happy to.
Rowan, no? I am gonna talk about school though. So. The biggest driver for me running for town council is honestly around school funding. I have 2 kids in the district. My wife is in her 13th year of teaching in public schools. And seeing the political climate around education nationally, state level, and locally is really upsetting. And that was honestly the biggest driver for me jumping into this election. I didn't like the language between the student council, well, not student, the school committee and the town council. And I wanted to help bridge that process. Infrastructure and all that other, those are huge components. But the reason why people are moving to this town has to do with education. Either working in one of the 3 colleges, or you're proud to have your kids in the school district. By routinely cutting the school budget year after year, to the point where the schools have fallen in ranking from top 10 to mid-hundreds. Teachers are not comfortable with their job security, and parents are just looking for answers. I think we really need to drive home that we care about our schools. That's really what I'm looking for. See the rest of my time.
Thank you. Who's next?
Yeah, I'll go for it.
Dylan?
Yeah, I mean, for me, schools, infrastructure is kind of the whole point of being a community, being a society. We're actually trying to educate the next generations. And then when it comes to infrastructure, this is a big one. We really just kind of take for granted that, you know, I turn on the tap, clean water comes out. I flush my toilet, it goes away. I like all those things being managed by our local municipality. I'm not looking forward to the day once we lose that funding and all of our infrastructure is private. Now I have to sign up for the app to turn on my faucet and pay whatever it is, my monthly fee. I think these are the important things that we want to make sure maintain public. Because these are things that everybody needs. We need to make sure that we offer them. So when it comes to funding priorities, these are number one, actually making sure we can do this. Police, fire, I think these kind of fall into infrastructure a little bit. You could say service if we want to try to get around that 1 and 2 as well. But really just those core things that we actually offer as a society that we know we need them. We want to make sure that we actually keep them funded and deliver on the actual basics of what we all know that we're going to need here in society. So that's why those are my top priorities. Also happy to see my time here a little bit.
Who's next? Are you, Lynn?
I like the idea that, Anna's had of lumping everything under municipal service. Because it's really, she's absolutely right. We don't have one thing versus another. The council's job is to balance it all and to balance the budget, which we have to do by the end of June of every year. So as we go into this coming year, we have to look at both the schools, the town services, the infrastructure needs, and the debt service that goes with that, as well as the library. And right now, we're in the process of a couple of major construction projects. And some of those are being paid for in large part by grants from the state, as well as federal government, and also from generous donations. So, but it still means the town has to embrace that indebtedness and pay for it. So as we look at this coming year, it's going to be a tough year. It's going to be a tough year because we only have one new building that's come on in the last year, and that's the one down the street. And every year, the growth in Amherst is 2.5%, which is what's required by law, and anything else that we can bring in based on new construction. And is the new construction, all of those high-rise apartments that people don't like downtown. That new construction is what's been floating the budget above 2.5%. So as we look at this year, we have one coming on. Guess what? There's none after that. Because the one project that was going to be in South Amherst just pulled out. So as we look at the budget, I think process is incredibly important. It's one of the reasons that I've actually initiated a group that's been talking to other across all four towns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason?
I'm gonna say, I think that we should go in with priority, and I think the school should be it. Schools in general was said before, education is the economic driver in this town. Like Patrick, I have 2 kids in schools, 3rd grader and a 1st grader, and seeing, just the results every day in schools of the lack of teachers, the lack of positions, the lack of paras, and the stress it puts on our teachers, who I think are fantastic. And they are, you can tell that they're very dedicated by remaining in their positions with the uncertainty that they have. And we really need to make sure that we are prioritizing funding these schools for the long run. And we've lost 35% of our teachers in the regional schools and 25% in the elementary schools over the last 20 years. And we get families to move in, and anecdotally, I know several families who said, we moved here because we thought the schools were great. Then we got to the schools and we send our kids to the charter schools or to private school. That takes, just imagine the sad state of our schools if someone moves to a town because they think the schools are great and then ends up leaving those schools because they're so disappointed. We have, I think, rested on our laurels when it comes to the reputation that our schools have and we need to do everything we can to bring them back up to that point. As, you know, as Patrick said, they used to be in the top 10. Now, sadly, they're not. And a lot of that is because we have neglected to fund them properly. Losing teachers, cutting programs, losing paras, not being able to give the kids the education that they deserve has led to, I think, part of our fiscal issues with families leaving and people not trusting in the services that we provide.
Thank you. So we're going to go on to the next question. And that is going to be, Anna is going to begin on this one. So we just touched the surface of the budget. You gave us 2 priorities each. You'll fight for your priorities, and then there's going to be all kinds of other stuff that you're going to be trying to squeeze into the budget. So when the debate's over, you're still going to be having a struggle to pay for your priorities and the other necessary services in town. So we're pivoting now to the question of things that are going to complicate the picture even more. We're in a very challenging period in our state legislature, and state legislatures all across the country are also dealing right now with a new situation, which is significant cuts in federal support, either for grants or formula funding or all kinds of federal funding. So can you give me some sense, and those who are listening, of how you look at this challenge and what you're thinking about how we might deal with this? And we start with Anna.
A really casual question. So a couple different prongs here that I want to touch on. The first is that we need to continue to support the community resources that are meeting the needs that federal funding getting cut are increasing, if that makes sense. So things like the Amherst Mobile Market, right? We need to make sure that we are making it simple for them to get the permits that they need to continue to operate this year, because we know that SNAP benefits are getting cut. So continuing, our role in this is often, what are the bureaucratic pathways that these organizations need to navigate in order to do the work that they need to do? And our place is in those bureaucratic pathways. And so our job is to figure out how can we lessen obstacles for those organizations to operate and continue to provide the services that they offer to our community. A couple other things though, because you said a word that is my happy place, which is state level advocacy. You didn't say those words, but that's how I'm interpreting this.
Close enough.
So we heard a lot about the need for school funding, and I agree that our school funding situation is really tough right now, and we're seeing some really devastating things happening in our schools due to the budget shortfalls. We're not alone. Amherst is not alone in our school funding issues. We are so special in so many ways, and this is not one where we are uniquely special. We're seeing this in communities around the state because the funding formulas are harming communities like Amherst. So we need to fight in all of the directions for things like school funding. We're also seeing this in a need for increased funding for roads and bridges and infrastructure. There's advocacy that needs to happen on the state level for organizations like the MLBC or the MSBA, which provide funding for us to build libraries and schools. We need to continue to advocate for bills at the state level that will allow for that funding for public safety buildings like DPW and fire. We also need to ensure that communities like Amherst aren't getting cut out or disadvantaged of current pilot formulas, payment in lieu of taxes, and cut out of the Affordable Homes Act, which we helped to push issues into. Happy to talk more about that when I have more minutes.
Thank you. Who's next?
Yeah.
Jason?
Thank you. I agree with what Anna said in many respects. I think we need to start by looking at our own budget and asking where we can potentially fill in some of the gaps with what money can we use. And we have to look towards the future. We need to start making it easier to build housing here as an economic as an economic development and because it's gonna take time. There's nothing that we're gonna be able to do in the next year or two that's going to fully replace all the money that's not coming in from the state and from the Fed. So we have to take have a long-term vision on how we're going to make ourselves more resilient, so we're not as dependent on those funds. Again, housing, I think, is the economic development that we can do that is probably the most, I'm gonna say the easiest, but I'm sure everybody that is not necessarily. It's easy in one respect, but easier said than done. So we need to look forward, we need to have forward thinking zoning and planning so that we can continue to grow, so we have some of that growth. Aside from aside from taking that future look, we need to also advocate at the state level for as a united body, as a town council that's united, also a town council and a school committee that are united, and have the same message to our state reps that that continues the work that I think has been done by the current council and the school committees around funding for a charter school formula, how we as a rural community fund our roads, fund our schools, build libraries. We need to continue that. And I think that aside from this just current ongoing consistent advocacy, we do need to have a forward thinking outlook and mentality on what we can do now to improve the future.
Thank you. Dylan, and then I saw Patrick.
Wonderful, yeah, I'll, you see actually a little bit of what Jason was talking about there. I think, yeah, we need economic development here in town. It's gonna be the only way we deal with the shortfall that we're gonna have in funding that we get from state and federal aid. I think Amherst has an incredibly unique opportunity that other communities don't have to develop housing that would be attractive to the student population here in town. And what we could do from that is, as Lynn mentioned before, those large buildings in town, they generate upwards of $300,000 annually, each one of those. So when you have that parcel of land, it requires less infrastructure, less road, less pipes that you have to lay to it, and it generates more tax revenue for the same amount of land. We could use that in such a way that we provide housing for students where they want to live. This would provide better quality housing for them rather than them being shoved into living rooms, as is currently what's happening, where they get what they can because you're talking about a population that doesn't have a whole lot of money, rather than trying to push them out of town, which is what we currently do. We can actually provide that housing that generates more money for the town. And one of the nice things, well, about having students as a rental population, they don't have kids going to the school. They are just paying the taxes into our budget without really putting a strain on the services of the town. So it's a really unique opportunity for us to actually solve the issue of student housing, which I'll talk a little bit more about in housing production, but it also solves the other issue of what are we going to do about budgeting uncertainty? We have an opportunity here to generate significantly more revenue while also helping 2/3 of our population. So I think that this is an approach that we can take. I think we can do make for much easier, much simpler zoning, be clear about what our expectations are and what we're trying to achieve, and then we can actually move forward with that.
Patrick, I think you were next.
So kind of following along with everyone. As far as the schools go, I am worried at the national level if they decide to start pulling Title I funding and whatnot, because they seem to be specifically targeting those states. And I think it's a real potential risk that needs to be cared for, at least with agencies in place at the budgetary level for the town. And then along with, strictly on schools before I get on to infrastructure else. Again, maintaining our advocacy at the state level around our school funding. I think Amherst and some of our surrounding towns are in a unique position where a lot of our, not a lot, but a decent amount of our school funding is going towards charter schools. Amherst is spending somewhere between $3 and $4 million on charter school funding, where we're paying the charter schools as our students leave the district. We look at school districts, Eastern Massachusetts, it's very near the figure. As far as infrastructure goes, I agree. I do think we need to relax some zoning. I live in the southern part of my district. The zoning rules are pretty lax. I want to say I don't actually have to go for the zoning board to get a fence approved for my yard, for instance. But building more affordable housing gets us some additional grants for roads, for infrastructure. I think we have qualified for several affordable housing grants. We have one coming up for the University Drive Street Rotary. The funding that, I think we're getting around $2 million for that. We got another couple $1 million for other areas around town, just building more affordable housing. That'll help stock, it'll help students, it'll help us all. Thank you.
Lynn,
We've just seen the tip of the iceberg. And for some of us, unfortunately, not a lot in this room, but 2008 was a brutal year. My own experience at the University of Massachusetts was I got notices from the state government 8 months into the year to cut the budget in half. And that's called mid-year rescissions, or 9C cuts. And there's been some talk about that. I don't think we're gonna see as many this year as we're gonna see next year, as the federal dollar keeps eroding away. And there is no way that the state can make it all up. They just can't, whether or not it's healthcare or whatever. So, but at the same time, we cannot give up on advocating to the state. And the town council has regularly done that. Different counselors have advocated, and we've advocated. And let me just give you some examples of what that has done for Amherst. Through advocating for additional funding for the library, we got a 6th payment instead of only 5 of an equal amount. For advocating because we were going into building a new school and there had not been an escalation factor, our senator and state representative were able to get us an additional amount of money for the new elementary school. For advocating around pilots, we aren't done yet, but at least now there's going to be a commission to look at the pilot formula. And they need to look at it because at this point, the town of Hadley gets more money than the town of Amherst because they have the polio grant. So we just need to continue to advocate for our fair share for Western Mass and for Amherst.
thank you. George,
Yeah,
you have not yet spoken? Oh.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't know what the state's gonna do. We don't know what the federal government's gonna do. I think we have to focus on what are things that we can think of that we could do that's within our power to deal with some of the challenges we're facing. So I want to go back. We talked a lot about schools. I want to talk about some concrete things that we're going to be facing and some suggestions I have for us to think about. With schools, for instance, one of the challenges they face every year is unexpected expenses. So you set your budget up and then a kid or kids come in and they need special education requirements and your budget suddenly is blown to pieces. So this is not an idea I've created, but I think it's a good one that the town could, at least for the elementary school, it's more complicated for the regional schools, but I think the same thing could be done. We need to have a kind of special fund that's set aside. We could use free cash. We could find some way to take some of the monies we have. And specifically for those times when you have those kind of unexpected expenses, the money would be used for that. That's something concretely we can do. Anna and others are right about advocacy. That's extremely important, but that takes time. I think we also with the schools need to look at our policy of giving basically a 3.5% increase to all the functional areas. It's something we should at least talk about. Should the schools get slightly more? Infrastructure. We're looking at a DPW building that just absolutely needs to be addressed. And so that's something we've set money aside. We have the reserves in place. That's something we should begin to work on this year. And hopefully we got a committee set up. We also have a wastewater treatment plant that's in desperate need of attention. Again, the money has been set aside for the study. That's an infrastructure need that's something that has to be addressed over the next few years. And finally, roads and sidewalks. The town manager is bringing a plan to us actually before our term ends. So I want us to think about, maybe we'll talk more tonight about concrete things we can do within our power to address the challenges we know we're going to face.
Thank you. Okay, so Jason, you're gonna be up first to bat on this next subject. There's been already some discussion so far in this discussion around economic development. So I want to drill down a little bit more there because we have two major revenue sources, property taxes and state aid. So what are the best ideas that you've heard of? And you can go back if you'd like and expand on what you might have said already related to economic development, but not all of you have spoken to that. What are the best ideas that you have for how we can generate new revenue, particularly when we think about economic development?
Yeah, thank you. 70% of our budget comes from property taxes. We need to build more housing. We need to build diverse housing options for all types of people. We need so that they can have money to spend in town, to go shopping, to go out to eat, and not be severely cost burdened when it comes to housing. There's so many people in this town that are cost burdened. The housing production plan lays it out. We really need to think not just about when I want to make sure when I say housing, I am not only talking about large apartment buildings. We need diverse housing options, and we need more mixed use. We need to have additional retail and commercial spaces in here. We need to work with, I would think we need to work with UMass and Amherst College to try to potentially put some sort of business incubator in town so that we can take advantage of all of the brilliant people that are here in town, but then every year we have such a brain drain from town. Those people could be staying here, opening businesses, if we've found a way to help them. And I think that's one of the things that the town can do in concert with the college and university. But housing is.
Thank you. I saw George, Dylan, and Lynn.
So I think Jason is right. We do need to expand housing options. We do need to address the missing middle. We do need to do more. I want to make a couple of quick suggestions in a moment. And I hope we'll have time later to talk about other ways that we can think about raising revenue besides housing, but I think it's probably the most important piece. The age of the single family home with the yard seems to be gone. The starter home in Amherst doesn't exist anymore. Can we think outside the box? Can we think of other ways that we could perhaps make that possibility of housing for some in our community? So imagine a young family that could buy a duplex or a triplex or a quadplex in which they live obviously in one part of the unit, but the other units are rented out to help them afford the mortgage. And what if that purchase was supported or subsidized in part by the housing trust or some other subsidizing agency? And part of the deal would be then that would allow them to purchase the duplex or the triplex or make it more possible for them. The income from the rental properties would allow them to meet the mortgage. And also you'd have some kind of deed restriction that basically made sure, because it is being subsidized by the community, a deed restriction that would say that these rental apartments also need to be kept under a certain amount so that you would try to make the rental units more affordable. So that's one suggestion. What about our existing housing stock? We think about building new, which we have to do, but what about this housing stock we have already? Could we provide interest-free loans to those who are aging in place to help them maintain their properties? And perhaps in return for that, We could have the right of first refusal when those properties go up for sale. Could we work with the Amherst Community Land Trust to protect and preserve 1 and 2 family homes in Amherst and keep them more affordable? Could we facilitate a program that would encourage students who are looking for an affordable place to live, living with a senior who needs help managing their home maintenance, but also get rental breaks? There are a few more other options here, but anyway, I'll stop there.
Thank you, George. Dylan, you were next.
Absolutely. Again, I agree so completely with what Jason said here. We can grow the budget through housing. And for me, as I'm running, the fact that housing grows the budget is kind of, a nice secondary concern that I think is wonderful. The real primary concern is trying to address the actual issue of housing. You have people paying $1,000 for a bedroom, and it's not even a high quality bedroom. The average, what would be a starter home, in any other community is going for $500,000 here in Amherst. When I looked at Zillow, before this debate, there is one home currently available for sale here in the district, and it is listed for $1.39 million. So out of reach of, most homeowners here. So what we actually need is more housing. We actually build the housing in the type that we need. 2/3 of our population are students. We can throw up our hands and say, well, UMass should do something about it. We should put pressure on UMass. Sure, I will chip in, we'll buy the weighted vest for the chancellor of UMass. We'll give it to him for Christmas. Really put some pressure on him. The chippable item of things we can actually do is change our zoning to allow for denser housing, the housing that we need, which is for students. We can put it close to campus. We can put it in our village centers where students actually want to live. It will generate a significant amount of tax revenue for our town, and it will actually solve the issue of housing. Students will want to live close to campus. I think we have a great community here. I think we're all wonderful people. Students should come get to know us. That being said, most of them kind of want to come here for their 4 years, enjoy themselves and go. And I don't think that they want to do it living in a living room cordoned off with a shower curtain. I think they'd rather do it in a home that's affordable, that has, maybe a little bit of dignity to it. And the fact that, again, it benefits us economically, we shouldn't pass up this opportunity.
Thank you. I think, Lynn, you were next, and then Anna. Sorry, Anna. Sorry.
Housing is one of the ways to grow revenue for the town, because it does grow your tax base. But one of the interesting things is some of our colleagues would like UMass Amherst to build more housing on campus. Guess what? We don't get to tax that. That whole beautiful new building that costs $1,700 a month to live in. Most of you can't afford it, and we don't get any taxes on it. So that is not a solution. If we're gonna build, take University Drive. We just put an overlay on University Drive. It's near the university, it's near food, it's near a nice bar, whatever else you want, and even a smoothie shop. And in the process, you have places that students want to live, and in some instances, but you need to figure out how to make it affordable. Because when a student is renting in a home, whether there's a shower curtain or it's the laundry run, they're only paying around $700 to $900 a bed versus the larger apartments. And so there's a huge differential between what we think of as affordable housing and what a student can honestly afford. So Amherst has done a lot around affordable housing. We actually are at 13% for the town of Amherst, which is higher than any of our neighbors. In fact, perhaps we need to work regionally on this issue as well, so that we have better housing all the way around.
Thank you. And who was next? Anna was next. Thank you.
So when we think about housing production, I am in this insane scenario where I was able to purchase a house here for under $200,000 in 2017. I know, it's insane. But part of the reason even then that I could do that was through down payment assistance. Through the federal government, I was able to put down 0%. I managed to do 3%, right? Those types of programs are things that might be at risk when we talk about federal changes, but are there things that our community can do to support those seeking to purchase a home for the first time? I would also like to see us explore incentives for folks who are selling their homes to put in deed restrictions of owner occupancy. We keep seeing these concerns where folks are saying, okay, these new apartment buildings that are going up cost $1,500, $1,700 a month for a studio. And so folks are moving into what used to be starter homes in our community, which now makes it so that the lowest price home is upwards of $500,000, and 500,000 looks like a deal. So is there a way to start to incentivize folks who are selling those starter homes to put in deed restrictions? I think that that is something the council should explore. I also want to agree with the point about the damage of public-private partnerships. The new residence hall that went in on UMass is not a UMass building, it's managed by a private company. That private company in any other scenario would be paying us taxes. But because they managed to make a deal with UMass to do this public-private partnership, which is a common thing, it's not some, shocking thing. They are not paying taxes, they're on tax exempt land. So I believe that we need to encourage the development in village centers where there's transportation, where there are businesses that need support, where there's a wonderful community, encourage that is where those apartment buildings could be going. And then I also believe that we need to look at legislation like what's come before us regarding duplexes and accessory dwelling units, where we might have rental units, but you also might see multi-generational families.
Thank you. And I think there are two others. Here we go, Patrick.
Lynn, do you want to go?
No, she's gone.
All right, just me, sweet.
Yep,
Um,
just Patrick.
so kind of following along everyone else, I also really think that we should explore expanding our housing stock. While I definitely agree that we should be expanding our apartment stock, I moved here from a town 5 years ago where we were in a very similar situation. We had just built a new elementary school that was a smaller capacity. We went through and built a lot of apartment buildings, and 2 years later, they had to build a new elementary school because they ran out of capacity. And I think that's my worry with, seeing estimates of 1,000 to 1,500 units possibly being built in the next few years here, or 5 years, whatever. So I think that's one of my concerns, if we only focus on apartments. I also want to look at building starter homes and, entry-level homes. I was fortunate enough to buy a starter home. I have a really big barn on campus that scared away all the landlords because it's kind of falling apart. But I was also a UMass student and I understand student housing. Any of you who are in Rolling Green, you'll know that the little closet under the stairs is the exact size of a twin mattress. That cost me $200 a month. So just expanding housing, I think, would be a nice driver for the budget. And then for the students in the room, I also want to look at exploring how we handle student housing in the city. I feel that it's largely discriminatory towards y'all. Like that was the case when I was a student, and it's still the case to this day. Much rather look at enforcing some of our bylaws instead of criminalizing who your roommates are, the number of them.
Thank you. So let's pivot to another question. New fire station and DPW building. Like to hear what your thinking is on those two projects.
When we first started the count, I get to.
And that's Lynn who goes first, and I just saw you're in number 2.
When we first started the council, we had not started a new school building. We had not started the Jones renovation and addition. And those were only 2 of 4 projects. The other 2 projects are the Department of Public Works, which is in a building that's over 105 years old. It was a trolley line. And the fire station downtown, which you can't even back into most days without taking out one of the mirrors on the end. Okay, so we still need to move forward with that. Everybody keeps looking at Amherst's wonderful reserves. Guess what? That's why we've been building them up, so we can build those buildings, so we can manage the cash flow, so we can actually handle the indebtedness. And so people want to spend our free cash. But if we spend our free cash, just like happened in 2008, when we backed off from doing the fire in DPW building. I was chair of that committee at that point. We backed off it then, and we have to back off it again. We cannot afford to back off. Our DPW is close to being condemned. It is so bad. You would not want to work there. And we should not be asking other people to work there. But in addition to that, we have now added, let's upgrade this building so we have a true senior center. And let's pay attention to our roads and our sidewalks. Infrastructure is a high priority in Amherst. We have a plan, but that plan is going to take money and it's going to take cash flow. And you have to understand how borrowing works, and you have to understand how you pay off debt. Right now, we are in a very good situation, but we will not be in as great a situation, but we will still be okay. And one of the reasons we will be okay is because our finances are solid and we have a AA rating.
Thank you. George, you were next.
So Lynn is absolutely right that the DPW is the next infrastructure, next building project that we really have to address. And we are poised to do that. The committee has been formed, the reserves are there, some decisions have to be made, but it's way past overdue. At this point, in many ways, whenever I see a DPW work coming towards me, I just put my head down and shame. But you know, I want to think also about the people. So we're going to talk about infrastructure, we talk about DPW, we talk about fire station. But we don't really pay our DPW workers very well. There's a tremendous amount of turnover. In one department, in the last 3 years, basically almost everybody's new. And they're dealing with absolutely essential infrastructure that is complicated and essential to our water and waste. Starting salaries are poor, retention is difficult, other communities pay better. But the DPW workers don't get much attention. Schools, lots of attention. You can get 70, 100 people to come here and speak passionately about schools. You won't get anyone to come here and speak passionately about DPW. And so I'd like to think also about the people. Same with the fire station. That's a more challenging issue. We thought we had a site for the fire station. Then the new chief said he didn't think it was appropriate. So now we're kind of back to ground zero. We have a station in North Amherst. We have a station in the center of town. The way it should be is we have a station in the north and a station in the south. And right now we don't have a place to put a station in the south. But also, when you think about fire, you think about what they do. The vast majority of their calls are EMS. And the vast majority of the people they serve, students, yes, sometimes on weekends, but essentially it's seniors. The growing population for them are people 55 and over, and that's what they do.
Jason,
Yeah,
and then Anna.
I think I have a little bit of a different opinion. I think that if the DPW building, it is in a terrible condition. It should have been prioritized over the library, and it wasn't. I think that was a big mistake. But we can't, I don't think we ought to be deprioritizing or really trying to build a new DPW building, saving money in surplus, put towards those buildings on the back of our students, on the back of our children. Because there's been neglect to actually budget for operating and maintenance costs for 30+ years, it seems, during the current council or the council structure, town meeting, which was before my time in town, but as I understand, very hard to get things through in that process as well. Our capital funding was increased 22.1% in the fiscal year 26 budget. The schools, Amherst schools got 5%, the regional schools 4.8%, municipal received 4%, and the libraries received 4%. We're having multi-million-dollar surpluses while we're cutting positions. We're cutting positions in schools, we're cutting teachers, we're cutting programming. I find it very hard to justify that. It's like we're saving money to renovate our kitchen while our basement's flooding, and we're not addressing the problem. And this is endemic. It's going on year after year. We're having these surpluses, and then it's going to this future building. when we're not taking care of the things that we need to take care of now in the schools. And I really do believe we are seeing a lot of problems in our schools now. And I know it may sound like it's expensive to fund our schools properly, but I guarantee you it's going to be way more expensive if we ever get sued because we're cutting so many programs and we're not legally providing what we legally need to at the bare minimum, which we don't want to be at. We don't want to be at the bare minimum.
Thank you, and I saw Patrick and
Anna
Dylan.
was next.
Oh, I'm sorry, Anna.
So every room in the house is flooding. This is not a situation of a basement and an attic, right? And in order to avoid overrides that our residents can't afford, we're trying to follow this funding plan. This funding plan has been disrupted for the capital projects. This funding plan has been disrupted, and because we often let perfect be the enemy of the good in Amherst, and because time is not kind to project budgets, which we've seen time and time again, case in point being our new school, which will be lovely and wonderful and cost a lot more than the first time that it came up for discussion and debate. I cannot wait until these projects start, because I think that we will finally be able to look at our budget in a new way when we're not trying to finance this plan. And I think that we haven't been able to do that, and that's really, really hard. We are following this plan that's been laid out so that we don't need to seek more overrides, so that we don't need to borrow for these projects. What we need to do is appoint these building committees as soon as humanly possible, and we need to give and hold them to deadlines. We also need to be open to new configurations and placing things in an area that we may not perfectly love. We had a site for the DPW, and then it was rejected by folks who didn't want to live nearby to a DPW. And now we're years down the road from that. I understand why someone may not want a DPW near their home, and what's the alternative, right? I think often we say we don't like this new thing, and we're ignoring the fact that our current condition is absolutely not okay. So we've got to be able to find this middle ground, and the actionable step here is appointing that committee and giving them the charge of deliver us a location first and foremost. I've got 5 seconds left, and I think that'll about do it.
Thank you. You guys are, who is next?
Go for it.
All right. Yeah. Sure. So kind of following in line with Anna. As far as the DPW goes, I was very annoyed to hear that the site for the new DPW was rejected and we're going with the originals. I think this should be a huge cleanup effort. It's probably going to be more expensive than accounted for with 5 years of cleanup needed to restore it. And the point of living next to DPW, I live across the street from Caleb Davis, which is one of the largest paving companies in Western Massachusetts. He has 60 commercial trucks coming in and out of his driveway every day. I got used to it pretty quick. And then likewise with the new fire station, the new fire station was again supposed to be across the street from my house. And I'm also all for that. I think, I don't know any of my neighbors that were against having a fire station directly across the street. It's been awesome. There have been a series of fires in our neighborhood just because the houses from the 50s and 60s and the wiring starting to go and houses starting to go up. And I think there's also just a general concern over the lack of fire and rescue in South Amherst. And then as far as the fire station in central town and downtown, and it is very old. We were just able to retire, I think, the oldest ladder truck in either Massachusetts or New England in the last couple of weeks, I think. Just because we couldn't get a new one to fit that station. And then for our EMS, we're out of the fire station. In addition to all the colleges in town, we have advanced EMS ambulances that don't just provide services to Amherst, but also the surrounding towns. So they'll rush off to Shutesbury, Leverett, and Pelham, and then rush them to the hospitals.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, if you asked me a couple of years ago what I thought about the state of these capital projects, I certainly would have
expressed a little bit more concern, where I actually think they've been pretty well on track, considering where we started when the council had first brought these up as a major issue back in 2018. We've gotten 2 of them done, the library, which I agree with Jason's point, that wouldn't have been my top priority, but that was right at that same time, they had secured a grant to actually develop that. We very foolishly didn't waste that opportunity and pursued that. And now hopefully the library is done. We got the schools, and one thing I will definitely give to our town manager here, that multi-million-dollar surplus that we're running every year is about $5 million. Of a $100 million budget, so we're running about a 5% surplus, which is very well done financial planning. So credit to our president and our town manager for that one. And I think we're actually moving along fairly well on projects. I think we're actually finally going to see the DPW move forward in the next couple of years, with the fire station shortly thereafter. So this is one I actually feel pretty confident about this moving forward, that I think if I'm elected, I'd be happy to preside over the success of these projects and say, look what I did. Elected and we got it done. But yeah, this is one extremely necessary. That DPW building is in bad shape. When it rains, the water runs through the light fixtures. It is not good. There's water running down the stairs. It is not a safe building. You don't want to be in there. But I think we'll move forward on this one. I know I had actually seen that site that was rejected, and maybe I'm a little biased here, but when I saw that site, yeah, that would not have been somewhere where I would have put the DPW. I think it's a solvable problem. We'll be able to find that. I think we'll get these projects moving forward.
Thank you. So on to another subject. So this town seeks to be a place which is welcoming and encouraging to all of its residents to live and work and be educated and be part of the community and be heard and be engaged. Could we hear some thoughts from each of you about equity and diversity and inclusion here in Amherst? And we'd be beginning that one with, I believe it's Dylan.
Oh, wow. So you mentioned being welcoming here in town. I think one area we could really start, and again, I'm going to harp on about this a lot, welcoming the students who are coming here into our community on a temporary basis. Try to welcome them in a permanent way. When I had come to town, I had attended here for UMass, and it was my neighbor and landlord at the time who, chatting with him, made me actually feel like I was welcome in this community. The summer I wanted to stay, and now I'm here 11 years later. I think that our plans of what we want to do for the housing problem and the student housing problem is that my opponents want to discriminate against students. What if we limit where students can live? Where are they welcome in town? And I think it's one thing to say, we support diversity, equity, inclusion, except for this specific list of people, which are students, which are 2/3 of our population. So I would say start by not discriminating against the majority of our population, just for the benefit of homeowners who, they've already got their house. They're not really impacted by rising rents. They're not really impacted by rising home costs. They don't want to see the character of the neighborhoods change. I don't want that. So we just continue to delay and stop any new housing productions. We treat students with hostility, and I think we should take a different approach and actually welcome the 2/3 of our population into our town and support them. I think that would be how I would approach this issue.
Thank you. Who's next? Lynn?
Amherst has done some significant work in the area of racial justice and equity, but there's always going to be more, and people are never going to be completely satisfied. And so we've started by our Creating Press, which is our responder group. And we're going through an assessment. In fact, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for the recent work they did to assess the whole area of equity and racial justice for us. And I think we need to look at that model, and I think we need to look at how we can make it work one way or another. So in addition to that, we've created our diversity and equity and inclusion department, and even though the feds don't want it, we kept it and we're keeping it. And they continue to do work on the beloved community side. So have we done enough? No, we will never have done enough because racial bias is inherent in so many of us. We don't even know we're doing it. At the same time, we need to remember it's not just people who are BIPOC or who are in other ways may appear different from us, but it's people who are handicapped, it's people who are older, it's all kinds of ways in which people don't feel welcome and embraced by their community. And so we need to make sure that we keep in mind who all of our residents are, our students, our elders, and our racially just, or our BIPOC population.
Jason, and then I saw Patrick.
Patrick, I think you were first. Okay. Thanks.
So. My ideas for the town as far as equity and civic engagement and whatnot. You know, the town just recently did a civics academy to bring people in and show the community how the town is run. And I would love to see that expanded and offered, you know, I think outreach was there, but my neighbors didn't really know what was happening. I have a lot of neighbors that are multilingual or maybe don't necessarily speak English. So getting translators in there and getting more people, as more of a diverse collection of people engaged, I think would be huge for pushing civic engagement at the town level. And then not just for, you know, the homeowners and whatnot. I don't know how it was at UMass, but at Amherst College, they really pushed their students to try and get engaged with the Civic Academy and get engaged politically. I would love to see that again from UMass and on campus 3 or 4 days a week at this point as a hobby. So and just seeing students get involved would be huge because when I was a student, I more as a raise the fist at the town, some students were getting involved, but otherwise it was kind of largely like, the town's there. And then, you know, doing more community outreach. So I walk the trails a lot around town, Conservation Commission, I think getting more outreach and having a system of actually volunteering to maintain the lovely trails around town or do the various cleanups and whatnot that are needed. I know there are local charities and whatnot that do that around town. And then also just helping out the elderly and disabled with fire hydrants in winter.
Thank you, and Jason was next, and then Anna, and then George, and then that would leave. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with what Dylan said, and I want to stress that there seems to be a lot of council, not just council members, but people in town that seem to think that it is okay to discriminate against students, college students specifically. And I would like anyone to just take the word students and replace it with any other group of people and see if what you're saying sounds discriminatory. And if it does, you probably shouldn't say it. The fact of the matter is, students are 2/3 of our population, and students are not monolithic either. There's many different groups within the student population, and some feel welcome, some feel more welcome than others. There's a number of things that we can do. As Lynn said, we've done some things, but we still have a long way to go. I think that one of the biggest things we can do to address some of the past inequities here is fully funding the reparations fund. I think Amherst College should, as a direct beneficiary of enslavement, fund the reparations fund fully. It's only about $1.4 million to get it to the $2 million max, that's a drop in the bucket for their endowment. They could easily do it tomorrow and they would not miss that money. And that money could really not only start to build on itself, but also allow for the new committee that's gonna present to the new town council to actually take steps to use those funds to help, with Black-owned businesses, or potentially start with a down payment assistance, all the things that were originally in the original committee plan. And then just accessibility. These meetings we have are monolingual, and they're often held at times when it's not easy for most people who work to attend them.
Thank you. Anna, I think you were next.
So there's two overlapping pieces that I want to talk about here. The first is when we think about an equity lens and looking at our work, it means looking at every single piece of legislation with the question of how is this impacting different populations? How is this, and specifically looking at populations that have been historically harmed, right? So there are things that we have in our pocket to look at here. We have recommendations from the Community Safety Working Group, and we have work that's already begun. So some things that I would like to see happen in the coming term are bringing the Resident Oversight Board to fruition and moving the Reparations Committee forward. That is work that has started and we need to continue to support as a council. When we think about the idea of inclusion in the work of the council for the community at large, it's an area of growth for me, right? I think something that I've always been working on is getting better at doing things like sending newsletters. For whatever reason, it is not a strong suit for me. It's a strong suit for some of the other people here, but it's not for me. We as counselors need to continue to do better at that. We also need to be able to explain the things that we are doing in ways that are understandable for someone who hasn't spent years learning them as part of the town council. They talk about the best way to learn something is to teach it. I've learned a little bit more about the budget process every time I tried to explain the budget process. We need to also do that in reverse, where we as counselors need to take what folks are sharing from their own lived experience and value that. And we need to take the things that they're saying they value or that they want to see, even if it's not in the perfect budgetary terms, or I say budget because that's the place this most often comes up. And we need to figure out how to work that into the system, not force them to understand the system to do it. So it's gotta go both ways. We need to be able to advocate for our residents, for our constituents, because this process is really hard and confusing. And then lastly, we need to take advantage of some of the other mechanisms we have for resident engagement. And I would support the Charter Commission pushing for at-large counselors being required to join district meetings or hold their own meetings.
Thank you,
Sorry.
and George, you're up next.
So when I first came here almost 40 years ago now, I became involved with Habitat for Humanity and eventually ended up serving on the board. I wasn't very good at actually construction, though I did do some of that kind of work, but people saw quickly that I might be better at more organizing and board work. But what I loved about Habitat and still do is that at the end of the day, you build a house. So when I think of equity, diversity, inclusion, I think of concrete action. So by the way, I think Patrick, Jason are absolutely right. And given our audience, I could spend about 10 minutes talking about how students are treated poorly in this town. At the old District 3 I used to represent, there was a constant refrain I'd hear from residents. I'd constantly push back. But I want to focus for just a few minutes on other groups that this community welcomes and works in terms of equity, diversity, inclusion. The first is the unhoused. We, through Valley CDC, we have a transitional housing site on East Gables on Northampton Road, just by the Amherst College football fields, that was built serving over 30 individuals. ServiceNet has a property on Deltatown Road that just has been open that serves about 15 or 20. The town has set aside the former VFW site on Main Street that we hope someday will become a permanent shelter with transitional housing, and that's moving along. We have Craig's Doors that provides the shelter right now. Currently, it's at the Baptist Church and also in Hadley. So we have the unhoused community. We have seniors, people aging in place. This building is the home of our senior center. It should just be the senior center, but it's not, and it's not going to be it probably for some time. But at least we're gonna put money into trying to fix it up. And finally, we have veterans, and the CREST program serves them really well. Ball Lane, we're building 30 units of affordable ownership housing in North Amherst, again through Valley CDC. So many steps we're taking to address the issue of equity, diversity, and inclusion across the board.
Thank you. Who's next?
That's it.
That's it? We've heard from you all. Wonderful. Okay, so Anna, you started the ball rolling in the direction of the next question. And that is, we're going under charter review at this time. And two of the most important pillars of our charter are transparency and engagement. And so, question on the table, and fortunately, you're not starting, Anna, because you already started, but we will be coming back to you, so you get to weigh in some more on that subject. But give us some of your thoughts about how we're doing in implementing the charter, particularly in these two areas of transparency and engagement. So this begins with you, Patrick.
As far as what we're doing now, I don't think it's good. For transparency and engagement, I mean, at the transparency level, I think that there are still open questions as to how things get through the town. There are times appear to be town council meetings where folks come in with a stated agenda and there's very little discussion. I also feel that with the engagement, I think town council are just supposed to have X amount of meetings a year. Still, two,
Per district.
right? I think in my district, I think we've had one a year, I believe. So I would love to see that actually increased. I think the engagement with the town councilors is pretty minimal. Again, just walking through my neighborhood, very few people know who's actually representing them in town or how it even works. Some people still think we're on town meeting. So there's a definite lack of engagement with the town over what's happening. I mean, that's really what I just want to see. I want to see the district meetings get up to maybe 3 or 4. I also want to see maybe there be specific locations for those meetings to be held. I know it's just revolving. There's not a specific location. So for District 3, right, it's really split up. You have UMass, or the north section of the district, and then we have our central location in the southern district, which is Palmer Village. It's tough getting across the whole district.
I saw George's hand next. Anyone else? Yes. That nod was 2 and 3.
So I actually represent District 3 right now, and so I want to push back a little bit on what Patrick just said. District 3 runs actually from Commonwealth College all the way down almost to the edge of Hampshire College. It's the entire western swath of Amherst along the Hadley line. It really is, in my in my brochure, I call it a mini Amherst, essentially. It is every demographic and every community you can imagine. And I've served it for the last 5 years, and I'm proud to serve it. In terms of engagement, what I do, I have a newsletter. By the way, after the meeting, if you're interested, I'd be happy to put you on it. It has over 450 subscribers. I've been doing it since I first went on the council every month, and I'll keep doing it as long as I'm on the council. That's the way I try to reach people. We do have district meetings, Patrick, in our district. We've had them at Orchard Valley, we've had them at Hickory Ridge, we've had them at Green Leaves. But if you look at a map of my district, you really scratch your head. So where am I going to hold the next one? But I do reach out constantly. I make myself available. I've been knocking on doors, as you can imagine right now. And in fact, he's right, there are people who still don't know what form of government we have. But thanks to my newsletter and thanks to work that I do, a fair number of people recognize me and they thank me. I think that we have a lot more we still need to do. The Civics Academy is something that's just been started, which is a great idea. Allows people to actually learn about town government and perhaps become more engaged. We have over 30 boards and committees, cover everything you could imagine, staffed by volunteers. And I'm always promoting that when I meet people and encouraging them to become involved, and that certainly includes the student population. So there are many ways you can become engaged, and I will say, quite frankly, I work very hard to reach people, and I make myself available all the time.
Thank you. And next was Dylan, followed by Lynn.
Yeah, when it comes to engagement, it is very difficult. I've been a long-term subscriber to George's newsletter, and I'm certainly someone who's engaged in town, and even still, I can't say I always read it all that thoroughly. Sometimes. Look, no one can accuse George of not being thorough in his news. But yeah, engagement is difficult. It's, as where you go through this process, you knock on doors, sometimes people are just not interested in talking to you. You've been going to bars to register students to vote. I'm a little over 100 students now, but it's after talking to, several hundred students where you get people where it's like, hey, what are you paying for a bedroom? Don't you feel like you're getting ripped off? Don't you want to do something about it? It's like, well, not really. I don't want to do that much about it. So engagement can be hard. You have to try, you have to put it out there, but you have, if you add more, I think, district meetings, you would just see less attendance overall at each one. Put the word out there, let people know what you're doing, but you can be as transparent as you want. When it comes time, you'll always have people showing up saying, this is the first I've heard about this. When it comes to the charter, I mean, my biggest complaint, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I think we went with the absolute worst form of government. I have a soft spot in my heart for select board town meeting. It is riddled with problems, but that's part of the New England charm. If we weren't gonna go with that, I think to actually go the other direction and have a mayor and have a city council. I don't love that we went for just a city council and a very large city council of 13 people. It's not the form of government I would have chosen, and I think as we go into the future, that might be worth revisiting.
Thank you, Lynn.
Transparency is a very tough thing, because some people don't actually want to find out. So, like George, I'd put out nothing nearly as sophisticated as George, but I do put out occasional updates to my district with an email list of close to 600 people that I've collected over the 7 years I've been on the council. You don't go on my email list unless you want to, and you come off if you want to. Because I don't want to bother you. In addition to that, as president of the council, I do a regular report. I doubt that anybody bothers to read it. It talks about meetings, it talks about the other stuff that, like, what did we talk about with Senator Comerford and Mindy Dom? And then in addition to that, my residents tell me, I always respond to requests from my residents. I advocate for my district. I believe that I have the responsibility of constituent service. As regarding the charter committee, I was one of the people who felt that they absolutely should have the extension. I look forward to their report. I think there will be a number of really good suggestions in it. And I hope some of them will be the way that we can increase citizen participation in council committees. And I also like the idea that at-large councilors have to go to district meetings. And by the way, every councilor in a district has held at least 2 meetings every year for 7 years, because I check with them to make sure they've done that.
Jason. Jason's up, and then Anna.
I think that transparency in budgeting is a big issue. There's a lot of people who I've spoken with that delve deep into the budgets and still find it very, very hard to understand where some of the money is going. I think to Anna's earlier point, it does take time. There's a learning curve. The more I've talked about it with people, the more I've learned about it in this you know, in running. But we need, engagement is a hard thing. You can't just tell people who come and get engaged. You have to offer them opportunities to be engaged. As I said earlier, we have, our meetings are monolingual, they're not translated. We have them at times that are potentially not accessible for people who are working. The Cup of Joe, it's a great idea, the Cup of Joe with Paul, the meeting with Paul Bachman, the manager, town manager. But I drop, they're at 8 o'clock in the morning generally, and I drop the kids off at school, so I'm already 30 to 40 minutes late to every one of those, which means I don't get to interact and I miss a good portion of those meetings. As far as the charter, I think we need to, I don't know if town meeting like was, I don't know if I would say that that would be a preferred form of government from what I've heard. I don't necessarily know if this is the best form either. I think having a mayor and having a person that's elected, as opposed to an unelected town manager is better. And that person can then run on their vision and then try to implement that vision and then be held accountable by voters. But I do think one of the things we need is term limits. Term limits for town council members, I would think 3 terms would be enough, 6 years. Term limits for council president at 2 terms, so 4 years. And I think that would help engage, that would help with engagement and get more people involved. I'm on the conservation currently, and it's really hard to get people involved in just those commissions and committees as well. So if any of you are interested in the conservation commission, let me know.
Thank you. Anna?
So I think that sometimes folks are looking back at town meetings with a little bit of the rose-colored glasses on. I hear comments wistfully missing town meeting most often from the individuals who were themselves members of town meeting, who understood how to navigate the system enough to get to be a representative at town meeting. These comments don't often come from the folks who did not feel represented, felt that it was not moving at the speed that needed to move, felt that there was not a clear way to reach their elected town meeting rep, or they didn't have time to attend multi-day, multi-hour meetings. We are still in our infancy as a form of government, and much of my focus in the past term has been on process. I believe that the most toxic phrase, I said this at the beginning, the most toxic phrase we have is, well, this is how we've always done it in the past. I talked about the budget coordinating group, we need to utilize that better. As chair of our governance committee right now, I'm revamping how we evaluate the town manager and how we set goals for the coming year. I hope that candidates are considering practical solutions to the issues that they're facing. And one of the questions that I'd like to pose to candidates and to the public is, what does transparency look like when it's operationalized? What does that actually look like in practice? Because sometimes we say we need transparency, we need transparency. Is it that we need more communication? Is it that we need that communication to be put in different terms? One of the challenges that we have is outreach. Lynn mentioned this in passing, we create our own distribution lists. We collect your emails. That is how we tell you about things. There isn't a way for us to automatically notify everybody in our district. So folks get left out unless they know to come to us to give us their email so that we can email them. That's a problem. We need structural support in communications as town councilors, which we do not have because we're missing a lot of our outreach. And lastly, with the Charter Commission, I'm really excited to see their report. A lot of the changes that they are recommending, some will have to go to the state if we want to shift, but some are part of the council's own internal rules. And in my mind, some of these things should have already been brought forward, and I look forward to bringing them forward.
Thank you. So you've all spoken to that last question. So the good news is, because we have a little bit of extra time, because you were all so efficient, partly because you combined 2 questions that I was planning to ask. So we actually covered those 2 things together. So why don't you take a minute or 2 right now to just think about it, because you've planned a minute. And you might want to take a minute or 2 just to think about what you want to add.
How long will we have?
2 minutes.
Great.
And we will still end on time, giving you this couple of minutes to think.
Just going to say to the folks that are online, we're not taking questions from the attendees in person or online. So I'm going to lower your hand.
please be in touch with the candidates.
Question. Worth noting that might not, speak of transparency and communication, that kind of all of us who are up here, we're not necessarily running against each other. My two opponents that I'm running are not here tonight. So I kind of feel like, as we've been talking, it's sometimes feel like we're almost in lockstep with what we're saying up here. But I think it might be worth letting people know that there's just.
And there was another of these on Friday, and there were 6 candidates there. So, thank you.
The,
That everybody gets to vote for 2 district representatives. There's 2 representatives for each.
very
district, 3 at-large representatives.
Very good. Thank you.
Can I make one other public service announcement?
Please.
And that is, if you think you signed up for a mail-in ballot, but you haven't received it,
Yeah.
it's because you didn't renew the fact that you wanted a mail-in ballot, and you won't be getting one. There is early voting at Town Hall this week, and the polls are open from 7 in the morning to 8 o'clock on Tuesday, November 4th.
thank you. I should note, to your point, the 2 other candidates for District 4 both intended and wanted to be here, and were not. One was, just pulled out of town, as of Friday. So just want to be clear that they had intended and hoped to be here, but cannot be here because they're out of town.
Okay, another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll begin closing statements. Okay, so we're gonna begin closing statements, and we go in the reverse order as we began. So the last shall go first. And so Patrick Drum, you will begin. Then Dylan, Lynn, Jason, Anna, and George gets the last word.
Thank you. So just to introduce myself, my name is Patrick Drum. Background on myself, I've lived in Amherst for a total of about 12 years. I was a student at UMass for several years. And then I worked full-time at UMass as well before moving away with my wife to Eastern Massachusetts. And then in 2020, thanks to, in part to the pandemic, I was afforded the opportunity to work from home, and we moved back to Amherst because we wanted to raise our kids here. At the time, we just had our second child, and we knew that the school districts were amazing. So we decided, hey, you know what? Let's move back. We can't afford Eastern Massachusetts anyways. So we came back, and thanks to that, I have been afforded the opportunity to start participating in civics and in the town. And because of that, I've become I've become an ardent supporter of education here in town. And in terms of getting infrastructure, for my side, it's a lot more of the conservation plan. At first, I actually applied to be on the Conservation Commission. It's rejected, getting back to transparency, never found out why. But this is my second time running. I do think that I've matured a little bit in my viewership of the town. And yeah, I would just love to run again, just for better school funding and more of a pinpoint look at our infrastructure plan.
Thank you. Dylan.
So I'd really like to just take this moment to highlight what the difference is between myself and my opponents who are fortunately not here tonight. What I am running on is the issue of housing. We don't have enough housing here in town. And the result has been rising rents, rising home prices. My opponents, they own their homes. They are not concerned with or not affected by rising home prices. They're not affected by rising rents. And this is why you will hear from them and the folks that they represent is as we try to build more housing, well, let's take a measured approach. Let's slow things down. Let's really get all interested parties together and figure it out, which is a long-winded way of saying it doesn't impact me. I don't want to do anything about this. I do want to do something about this. I want to actually solve this problem. We have an opportunity to solve this problem in a way that benefits the students, the residents like myself, and the town's bottom line. We can actually develop the housing that we need. Again, my opponents, they don't want to see the character of the neighborhood change. That's their concern. I'm gonna say it right now. The way that we talk about neighborhood character, the way that we talk about zoning today, in 50 years, we're gonna talk about it the way that we talk about redlining today. We are making things prohibitively expensive for younger people, for poorer people who are trying to come up in the world, simply because the people who already have theirs, they're fine shutting the door behind them because it doesn't impact them. It impacts me, it impacts students, it impacts working class folks, it impacts any type of renters. You'll see as you walk through the neighborhoods, the fancy homes are gonna have the we'll have the Jennifer Taub signs and the Pam Rooney signs, and the rentals, I've spoken to people in there. They're gonna be the ones with the Dylan Maxfield sign out front. So I hope you will support me if you want to actually solve the issues that we are facing here in town, rather than kicking it down to somebody else and saying, well, maybe UMass should do something about it, because they're not going to.
Thank you, Dylan. Next is Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you to the Amherst Current and the UMass School of Public Policy, to our audience and to my colleagues here tonight. I've worked to make our new government successful from the beginning with new procedures to securing the town's basic operations to tackling challenges old and new. And I ask for your vote. Lynn Griesmer for District 2 on November 4th. I'm proud of the council's accomplishments over the last several years. Building a new net zero elementary school, completing the North Amherst Library expansion with generous funding from the community, and launching the Jones Library renovation and expansion project. Shepherding other infrastructure projects such as the Centennial Water Treatment Plant and pushing for a comprehensive plan for roads and sidewalks. Supporting schools, strong schools, and balanced budgets for both schools in town. Providing seed funding for affordable housing, which has actually either been built or being built today. Enhancing community recreation spaces like the North Common, Hendrick Park, Groff Park, and our dog park. Finding ways to increase tax revenue through appropriate rezoning and overlays such as University Drive. And we need to continue to do that. And as I mentioned earlier, testifying on any number of issues over the last many years, including basic funding for our schools and better distribution of charter reimbursement so that we aren't paying bill. We have a ways to go though. Our progress on the school and library projects are great, but we still need to do the DPW, fire and EMS, a renovated senior center, and repair and replace roads. In addition to that, we need to continue to forge safety and work in more just community with proper funding for press and institution of a resident oversight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Next is Jason.
Thank you. Thank you to the Current. Thank you to Mass Amherst School of Public Policy and all the candidates participating tonight, and all of you for attending, and everyone watching at home now and in the future. My family and I moved here in 2021 and quickly fell in love with the town. It's a fantastic place, and I like to say that Amherst is special, but we're not unique. We're not unique in our problems. We're not unique in the things that we face. And I think we're at an inflection point, and we need to prioritize the future of our town by making forward-thinking decisions regarding everything that we've discussed here tonight. We need to really make good decisions now so that we're not forced to make bad decisions later that are just expedient at that time. I am also running with housing being the major pillar of my platform. I and my family, we are incredibly fortunate that we own our home. Well, technically the bank still owns it, but one day, eventually, we will own our home. But we got very lucky. We had help. We had support. And that doesn't exist for everybody. All of the great things that we have done and all the great things we want to do, all of the values that we profess to have, we can only enact those things if we have the finances to do it. The housing is the major driver for our economy here, aside from UMass being the major employer. But the property taxes are the major driver for our economy. And for too long, we have had this NIMBY attitude that has prevented housing from being built. We need to build diverse housing options that include everybody. 55 and older, disability, limited folks who are limited in income, limited in any other way. We can't be a town that is just for really wealthy people and, you know, college students who are getting squeezed for the last dollar by predatory landlords. We have to have diverse housing options. Everything else is downstream of the economics of housing.
Thank you very much. And next, Anna.
Thank you to Stan, the Amherst Current, and the UMass Public Policy students for sponsoring this debate, and especially for including uncontested races. I hope that as you go to the polls, you will ask yourself across these debates and forums and in their campaigns, who has discussed concrete plans, who has the knowledge or will ask the questions to gain the knowledge to get things done. Campaigning is a different skill than serving. And I encourage you to look for individuals who will show up prepared, who will do the work, even when that work isn't political or their project of choice. Look for plans, not political platitudes. We need counselors who are willing to learn and inform themselves and who are willing to change their minds once they do so. We need those who come to the table ready to work with others, including those with whom they disagree, because there is no path forward on any of these issues that does not include dialogue and compromise. I hope voters will question declarations of an elected body, an individual, or an issue that are absolute and without nuance or self-accountability, especially when those declarations echo the fear-mongering language we are seeing at the federal level, which is designed to stoke the fires of divisiveness. Nothing we do is a yes or no. There is always context, nuance, and impact to consider. There shouldn't be any group of candidates who vote and think the same way on every issue. Don't rely on a slate, consider each individual. I show up prepared, I ask the hard questions, and I seek to understand. I have demonstrated that I can write and introduce policy and have worked with nearly every other counselor directly on different initiatives. I encourage you to look for candidates who will not wait for others to propose change and yes or no it, but who will introduce it themselves. Local government is hard and nuanced. There's never a 100% perfect answer to the questions we face, but we get a lot closer when we work together with positive intent and without resentment. Effective town councilors look for avenues to do the most good for the people who need it the most without leaving anyone behind. I know. That is what I seek to do every day, and the record of what I have done shows it. While District 5 does not have a contested race, I still need to earn your vote. I hope I will do so on November 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. George.
So while I was listening to some of our discussion this evening, I was reminded of, I think this is Winston Churchill, who once said that democracy is a very bad form of government, but all the others are so much worse. This is a great town, and of the 40,000 people who live here, about 24,000 are college students. And that's the reason, in large part, it is a great town, but it has many challenges. I could talk a lot more about some of the challenges, but I'm just going to focus now on what I've been asked to do, which is my final message. My campaign signs talk about a 21st century vision for Amherst. Lynn, I think, has listed a whole host of things that have happened over the last 7 years that I've been involved in town government along with Lynn, of which I'm very proud. and embody, I think, that vision. I've served this district for 5 years. I'm proud of my service and I'm eager to go back. If I'm reelected, I'm going to use my experience to continue to focus on the specific needs of the residents of District 3 and particular issues that concern the quality of life. In particular, I want to focus on the issue of our fully funding our schools, but at the same time recognizes the needs of our entire community and the services it depends on. I want to address senior issues. We have a growing senior population, many choosing to age in place. We need to better attend to their needs and concerns. I want to work on addressing the growing backlog of road and sidewalk repairs and the infrastructure issues that we began with earlier this evening. I want to find a way to ensure, this is a small thing, but important to me, given my kids and what we did growing up. I want to find a way to ensure the adequate maintenance and care of our athletic fields. We have extensive fields in this town. We don't do very well to take care of them. Finally, I have a duty to listen, and that's what I do, and I try to do. I have a duty to inform. You've already heard about my newsletter, but my greatest duty is to make decisions based on the best information that I can get, and that I believe are in the best and long-term interests of our communities.
And with that, we want to thank all of you candidates for putting yourselves forward. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Some of you are serving in the current office that you're running for again, and others are serving on other boards. So thank you for all of your service to date and everything you'll contribute to the town in the future. And thanks to everyone in the community who's following this election and is going to help decide our path forward by choosing the representatives who will speak in our names.
Thank you.
Thank you.